Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Catalyst Meditation talk today. And the talk today is going to be on societal trauma. Um, some of you have seen that I'm doing a workshop series in April on the concept of societal trauma. I want to talk a little bit about that today. Um, One of the things that's just um, interesting is that I think that our trauma issues are mutating in front of our faces. And I had a personally weird day yesterday as I was interacting in the world with other people. Um, I was noticing um, people interacting in two vastly different ways. Um, very dysfunctionally and very connectedly. I had interesting interactions with people. Um, I'd usually when I go to the grocery store, I usually do self-checkout. I don't know why. I like checking out my own stuff. Um, and one of my purchases needed an ID, and I gave the checker, the group checker, um, my ID, and she looks at it and she starts putting numbers in, and she says, "Oh, it's your birthday soon. Well, congratulations. And, I hope you're planning something." And we had a little talk about my birthday, and I just thought that was quite human of her. Um, and um, and I guess like 5 seconds later, they were carrying this guy out of the store in handcuffs, and he is cursing his head off, and the security people around him are looking grim. And I'm like, okay, well, there's something else. And then there were traffic issues, etc. So it's almost like, on the one hand, it was like Mercury retrograde is going to go out with a bang. On the one hand. On the other hand, the societal trauma I'm talking about is not something that's going to be leaving us anytime soon. Um, we've painted ourselves in a corner. Um, some of us can see some of the toxicity of our society. Generally, when we are of one um, political persuasion, looking at the folks of the other political persuasion and saying, "Oh, those people are immoral." When I look at it, I look at the large sweep of things. And when I'm looking at it, I'm seeing all of us participating in a dysfunctional, suicidal, depressed, depressing um, situation. Um, so many of you know I don't watch television. I have a television. It's over there in the corner, and I'm not sure I've had it on in the last 10 years or so. But when I do watch it, it's generally I'm in a restaurant, and I don't have the ability to turn myself away from the TV, from a TV screen. And um, there were people on the screen. There's no sound, so of course you have no idea what they're doing. And they're engaged in some idiotic contest, and everybody's laughing and smiling and jumping up and down, and the host is introducing this and that and the other. And you could look in the people's faces and see that they were not having fun, that they were told to have fun, that they were told to smile and jump up and down. And if you smile and jump up and down, you get to stay on the screen. And if you don't smile and you don't jump up and down, you don't say the right things, you don't get to stay on the screen. So we acquiesce in a society that doesn't fit our we it's almost like we don't even have an inner life. Not only it doesn't fit our inner life, we don't even know what our inner life is. We're working in order for us to retire, and then when we retire, we sit around and watch TV until we drop dead. Many of us, an unbelievable number of us, are on medications to get us through the day. Um, we don't know how to function without those medications. And I don't, this is some of these are truck drivers who um, are long haul truck drivers, and they can do that because they're on the medications that keep them awake so that they can do that kind of driving. Um, some of them are business managers, and their employee assistance program is feeding them the meds they need in order for them to get through a day. There's something wrong with this. And I think it's time for us to recognize that this is not how people ought to be interacting with each other. This is not what is calling our hearts. This kind of trauma, this kind of personal pain, this kind of addiction is at epidemic levels. We have a global pandemic going on right now, and there's no relief in sight. Um, when we look at the number of shootings, of uh, death by cop, someone goes and just shoots up a mall or shoots up a movie theater, knowing that the police are going to ease their pain. Um, they want some way out of their pain. Someone said that that person doesn't necessarily want to kill themselves. They just want the pain to stop. They want to feel good about themselves and about their world, and they don't. And the only thing they know is pick up a gun and start spraying bullets around. So I started looking at how the toxicity of the society creates the toxicity within the people in the society, and that then goes on to create more toxicity in the society, and that creates more toxicity within these people. And this goes round and round. The problem with this, and by the way, I'm going to get off the subject in a minute of what the problem is and start talking about the solution. As you know, I've been very critical of so-called leaders that spend all their time talking about problem, 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 and they don't offer any solutions on how you resolve the problem. Um, and I'm going to do that. No, I'm not going to do what they do. I'm going to give you some solutions to the problem, um, and some understanding of why it gets worse. The reason it gets worse is that for many, many, many people, um, they see their problems um, not as problems, but as marketing opportunities. That um, the pharmaceutical companies see the problem as um, put more drugs out there. They're already making multiple billions of dollars on antidepressants, antipsychotics, um, all the stuff that gets you through your day. And it doesn't work. And so then they sell the next round. And these in conjunction with these will work. And it works for a few months, and then they stop working. Your brain gets smart and says, wait a minute, this isn't what's really going on. And then they sell the next level and then the next level. And people think that that's okay because somebody's making billions of dollars from this. And the people who are working, making the billions of dollars, they don't want the problem to be solved. They don't want a cure. They want to manage the problem. They want to keep the problem going, which will keep their profits going, keep their research facilities going, and keep them um, their companies profitable even at the expense of the lives that are being wasted. You listen to some of these commercials where people are talking about, oh, I feel so much better now that I take such and such a drug. And in the fast talking part, side effects include violence, murder, uh, suicide, and how is that a side effect? We need to rethink our entire approach to life. The problem is that that's not life. That's a system that keeps us trapped. Been talking about that system, the breaker system, for a long time. Been talking about the solution to the breaker system, but not from the point of view of that person inside, what is happening inside of the the person going through the depression, the person going through the despair, the person going through the lack of fulfillment, um, and we need to do things differently. So let me share with you a couple of uh, stories of what does it mean for us to be functioning in a healthy society? What does it mean for us to be functioning in a society where people have a sense of their good? They have a sense that things are getting better, that their lives are getting better for their children. That there's a sense of uplift. There's a sense of I'm on the that we are coming in together, and all of this is moving in the right direction and on the right side. Let me give you a very small taste of that happened just yesterday. Had a full day yesterday. Um, I'd gone somewhere I gone to Goodwill to buy some books. And by the way, if you don't know, Goodwill's a great place to buy books. I'll if we can do a book review some other time. So the guy behind the counter looked at my button, creating a world that works for all, and he's trying to parse it. And because I'm wearing a button, that generally means that I'm on one side of our social divide or the other side. And he's looking and trying to figure out what side I'm on. And you can't do that. There's no side. Um, the um, um, So he said to me, "Oh, that's like you want the world to be a better place." And I said, "No." I said, "Wanting the world to be a better place was Adolf Hitler's goal." And his eyes almost fall out of his head, and he's thinking about this. And he says, "Well, yeah, Hitler wanted the world to be a better place for a very, very narrow group of people." I said, "Yes." And um, the people that we deal with are one a slightly wider set group of people, okay, but still not everybody. So this is creating a world that works for all. And he's looking, he's like, well, how does that work? I said, we get to figure out how to make it work. And he's really parsing this. Okay, so I'm on my way to someplace else, and um, he's standing at his counter, staring off into space, and he's saying, "A world for all, a world for all." He's repeating it. And I said, okay, I'm going back in a couple of days and see how he's worked on this. But all of a sudden, possibility is awakened for him. Possibilities that did not exist um, prior to him looking at my button and us having this little, very tiny conversation. Um, I'll go back next week and hand him a card, and then we'll have a conversation about all this. So, what would it feel like to be part of a world that actually was working for all beings? Have you ever seen it? What is the circumstance in which you've seen that? I've seen snippets of that all around the world when you in and especially in societies that are not overly industrialized, overly toxic, like what we've got. You get to see how people act toward each other when they are freed from assumptions that rob them of their humanity, that rob them of their purpose in life, that rob them of their divinity. Um, I was in Hong Kong some years ago, and there's a lot of young girls are from other countries are in Hong Kong because they're caregivers and cleaning people for rich people, and a lot of rich people in Hong Kong. So they have Sundays off, and so they go down to a particular square, and you'll see, 10,000, 20,000 girls from the Philippines, and they're all braiding each other's hair. And they're all talking at the same time. How they can hear each other, I don't know. And there was this just sense of I've got drudgery for 6 days out of the week, and for this one day, um, I get to be a human being. I get to be with people who actually like me. I get to connect. We get to connect with each other, etc. Um, I've been in societies where that sense of connection happens 24/7, and that gets really interesting. I remember being in Ladakh, and Ladakh is that piece of land that's northern India. And if you look where India and China meet, it's that a very contested area right there. Um, Not contested by the Ladakhis. They've been there for thousands of years. People seem to forget that. They're not Indians and they're not Chinese. Um, and there were women on the street, and they had grown vegetables in their vegetable plots at home, and they had more than their families could eat. So they were selling their excess vegetables on the street, and people were buying them. And while they were selling the vegetables, their kids are sitting on their laps or playing up and down the street, and they're talking to their neighbors. And there is this relaxed quality to their lives. The kids are running around because everybody knows the kids are safe. Everybody knows everybody else on the street except for me, and I look harmless. Um, Everybody is interested in in selling their vegetables, but they don't have to. They're going to eat that night. They will have a way of connecting with each other. Um, they they don't have to scramble to worry about paying rent. There's no such thing as rent. The land has been in their families for 1,000 years. Um, they know what they're doing, what their parents did. They're doing this, and they know their kids are growing up knowing what they're going to be doing when they get mature. That there's a sense of everything that there's a sense of all the stuff we don't have. We Westerners don't have. And we'll tell ourselves, oh, our lives are so much better than their lives. We get to, make thousands of times more money than they make. So what if you're not happy inside? Oh, we get to have cars and all this other stuff. And it's like, yeah, but how happy does that make you when you feel inside? Um, uh, I I was in um, somewhere, some rice growing country. Could have been Thailand, could have been Indonesia. If I think hard enough, I'll tell you where this particular scene was. Um, but every day I passed a group of women who were harvesting their rice by hand. And it's a multi-step process. Um, Somebody has to be there with the knife and cut the long blades of rice down. Somebody else takes it over to there's a wooden contraption, and you beat the rice bundles against a wooden contraption, and the rice seeds fall down into the contraption. And then you've got to pile up the residue, and they either burn it or they mulch it or they get all that back down into the ground. And the whole time they're doing it, they're talking and they're having fun, and there is no one telling them they've got to work harder. So, they'll do a bit of that, then they'll stop and they'll make some tea and they'll sit, and then somebody will thresh some more, and somebody will take the residue away. I'm sure that it has a name, but I don't know what the name is. Um, and they know that their entire process is alive, from planting the rice, from flooding the fields, from growing the rice. It's all in a way that is easy for them. that they recognize the beauty that they are in. And how many people talk about ease and beauty in the work that they do and how they do that work. Well, that's what happens when you create money as the central equation, as opposed to things like community, things like fulfillment, things that make us happy to be ourselves, happy to be with each other, and happy that we're doing something worthwhile and familiar. One more story. I was years and years ago working in Canada on a cob structure. Let's just call it rammed earth structure. Um, and you get mud and you mix it with straw to a certain consistency. Then you take that straw and you make a wall out of it. These walls are like 2 or 3 feet thick, and you can take it up as high as you want to make them. And you get these big boots on, and some people are throwing straw in your mud pile, and you're stomping the straw. And when you get tired of stomping the straw, then you get to carry these bundles of mud and straw to the wall, and you smooth it out with your hands. And I was putting in pieces of glass that would shine into the this house once it got finished, and we had a ball. One of the things about this ball was that you got really, really dirty, and this is it's called returning to the earth before you have to drop dead. Um, and we, if we were allowed to, could build all the houses that we need for people who don't have them by dancing in a mud hole. And if we did that, we would be working in a very different way. I'm going to make this personal to me. A lot of the stuff that attracted me to um, my expression of faith when I was 10 years old, um, 12 years old in St. John's Episcopal Church was not the norm. The norm was very seriously dysfunctional. There were members of the church that were sexual predators, and nobody called them on it. Nobody said anything about it. When it came out multiple times, you just kind of cover over it. This person is a financial contributor to the church, and you know, the kids that they were messing with were probably just mistaken. They didn't know, what was going on. And it's like the excuses that we make, and the excuses that we make have impacts on people's lives, you know. And at some point in time, um, what we need is an escape from the crap. Okay. Someone was saying that you look at the very famous Norman Rockwell painting of Thanksgiving, and all the family is around the table, and even a little puppy at the table is being reverent, and this is a grand spread of food on the table, and you look right past that and you start seeing the dysfunction that's there. It's present for everyone, and we just choose not to see it. This is what Havel talks about when he says that we're living a lie, a consensual lie, a lie that all of us support because we think we get something from it. And so we need so you are absolutely right. We need a new spirituality. And that's not even a but. That was not a but coming out of my mouth. And we need a new morality. And by a new morality, I'm not talking about um, uh, the easy stuff. I'm saying the thou shalt stuff is easy. Um, what we need is, the morality that says you can't put the chemicals in our food that you're putting in our food and not tell us that they're there. You know, um, you can't adulterate the products that you're making. Just because you can make products that fail doesn't mean that you should. And if you do, then you're not allowed to make these products anymore. Um, and uh, Earlier in the week, I think we talked about the young man who, as a 16-year-old, took on the plastics in the ocean issue and has made an impact of millions of tons of plastic in the ocean. And it's like, how did that get there? We know exactly how it got there. Um, the when I was on the fishing boat in Homer, Alaska, while everybody else was fishing and I was throwing up, um, part of the line got tangled. The fishing line for one of the people who was out fishing got tangled, and they just cut it off and threw it in the water, and then they hooked it onto something else and they kept going. And it's like, what happened to that line? It's only like what, 3 feet? It's only 5 feet. It's only a quarter of a mile. It's only enough to wrap a whale. It's only and it's only part that starts to get to us. Um, that if you sell a product, you have to buy it back. If you sell a product and it kills someone, then you've got to pay for that. This is really this is not complex. This is really simple. And if we want to, we can do this. We can do that if we wanted to. We can do it today. Um, the question is who wants to? And once we get money from being our primary goal, our primary be all end all to our lives, and replace that with life. Once life becomes our primary, we're going to be living in a radically different world, and one where human beings aren't the only ones smiling. Um, and I see that Jenna has her mic on. I don't know if that means that Jenna wants to say something or not.
I would like to.
Well, there you go.
Um, Stepping back to your starting point, uh, that you feel are young or sort of clueless about what a better life would be like. And I remember when I was younger, coming out of college, making that transition into adulthood was making that transition into being independent, being responsible for myself. And yes, it was focused on starting to work, finding a place to live, and so forth. And then I remember in my 30s, mid 30s, after finishing leading a 2 year project that was a major project, and all that how it exhausted me and yet got me promoted, there was a part of me that started asking, is this all there is? My son is turning 33 next month, and I'm noticing he is starting into that same question. Is this all there is? And he doesn't have answers, and I'm not trying to feed him answers. But what I'm suggesting is I think it may be part of that maturation process that our youth may not, they've grown up in a materialistic society. And to start being responsible and independent, that seems to be the path to follow. But perhaps it's not in the 20s that they start asking deeper questions. It doesn't mean necessarily that they won't at some point.
Um, I Number one, I agree with you. I think that's my job is to agree with everybody, at least for today. Um, but no, did a butt just come out of my mouth? Um,
Yes.
okay, I'm going to stick with it. But um, I think that thing of responsibility um, starts way earlier than that. And I remember um, raising my daughters where they had responsibilities as soon as they could stand up. They had things they had to do, and they wanted to do them. Um, you're going to help set the table. You're going to help wash the dishes. You are going to clean your room up. You're not going to do this until you do that. And each thing that we were doing, um, my wife at the time and I were doing, each thing that we were doing helped them to become more um, responsible in themselves, responsible in our little microcosm of society called a family, responsible in the larger sense of, yes, you've got things that you've got to do. Um, yeah, you've got to finish your homework and you don't get out of it. It's like when you finish that homework, you got more homework. Um, and then you graduate and then you get more homework. Um, and so our right now, I see kids who have absolutely no responsibility for anything. And they got that from the time they were 6 months old. I watch people, and I'm sitting in the coffee shop, I'm looking out on the street, and I'm seeing people following their children. The kids are in the lead and they're walking wherever they feel like going, and the parents will follow them this way and follow them that way. And it's like, how are you instructing them how to live in society when you're not giving them any instructions? Well,
Well, I
wait. So they'll say, we don't want to suppress their curiosity. Well, good. Don't suppress their curiosity, but tell them if you drop that on the ground, you have to pick it up and put it in the trash can. Okay. I mean, you can help them um, express themselves, but you can do that in such a way that they actually do learn something. And Esther just said, and I don't have my glasses on, so I'm guessing at what Esther said. Um, Sometimes the best way to lead is to herd them from behind. Yes, that is a technique. I don't see these parents doing that. Okay, I don't see. Um, I told you my maybe I didn't tell. I'll tell you again because I think it was a great story. Um, Me and my daughter, my eldest daughter, and her macaroni art that she was able to put on her refrigerator. And I told her, I said, this isn't good enough to put on the refrigerator. You didn't try hard enough. And she's like, I want it on. I said, go do a better one, and we'll put that one on the refrigerator. And she worked and she glued her macaroni in the right way. And I said, that one is real. That macaroni art should be put on the Sistine Chapel ceiling. Um, and then she had a notion that not everything you do is perfect or good or whatever, or even acceptable, and that you've got to try hard. So I know, Jenny, you want to say one more thing, but let me say one more thing down this road. Um, so fast forward to my second year of law school. I was clerking with a very large, very prestigious firm in central Massachusetts. And one of the senior partners gave me a task to draft a memo for a court on some issue that is irrelevant to our story here. And so I drafted the memo. It was about 5 pages. It answered a question that was a question for the court to answer. And I went to the senior partner's office and handed him the folder with this memo in it. And he took the folder and he held it up in the air. He didn't open it up. He held it up in the air. And he said, is this the best that you can do? And I said, you asked me a question. I answered the question. The answer's in the file. You know, it's adequate. And he's still holding this in the air. He says, is this the best work that you can do? I said, yeah, I probably could make it better, but it answers the question. He hands it back to me, says, I don't want to read it. And I took it out and actually started over again. And a day later, I went back. And it went from 5 pages down to 3 pages. And he held it up. And again, he says, is this the best work that you can do? I said, it's not only the best work that I can do, it's the best that anyone can do. I had a bit of an ego at the time. And then he takes it and puts it behind him and he says, no, I don't have to read it. And that was I'm sure he probably did this with all of his summer clerks, but Yeah, that had a big impression on me that you always do the best work that you can do, even if it's not um, for public consumption, even if it's not the best, a best-selling novel or whatever. It's the best that you can do, and how many people have that as their goal? Has that as um, their personal goal. Um, and so, Jenna, you were going to say something else.
Um, I think I sort of lost it,
Okay, well,
but um, I agree. We're seeing parenting styles and children growing up differently than how people used to be raised. I see it with the kids on my street that I'm always connecting with the young ones, and I'm reading also about with AI, the effects it's having on critical thinking, on thinking for yourself, of even common sense, a sense of common sense. There's a lot that's changing. And I guess, yeah, there's things to look at and notice that we think are not going to be helpful. At the same time, I tend to want to be focusing more on what will be helpful. And the question for me is, what actions are going to bring that about? What will contribute to masses of parents starting to realize, oh, I need to be doing things differently,
well, uh,
or whatever needs to change. Um, I'm trying to find that balance point between looking at what's not working, but how does that move us forward unless we have some ideas of what we can be doing instead?
um, this is, I believe, a really important point. Um, I'm going to be making this point, I believe, very forcefully when we get into this April series on societal trauma. And the point is this: we have to have a focus for ourselves personally, for our families, and for society as a whole. And our society gave us this focus back in the day when we were kids, although that focus was largely a lie. Um, I remember, as you do, um, watching the CBS Evening News, watching Walter Cronkite, unless you did the Huntley and Brinkley folks. You needed two of them to match Walter Cronkite. Um, and they told you what was going on in the world. They gave you a way of looking at the world, a way of seeing what was going on in the world. This is the world according to Walter Cronkite, the world according to Huntley and Brinkley. And our um, Our sense of self and other came from that view. And if the people giving you that view were honorable people, then you came up with an honorable code. But right now, when you start asking the question, what is it that we believe? What is it that we want? What is it that is the center of our society? I think that that has to be this right here. If you are not acting to create a world that works for all living beings, then we need to redo whatever it is that you're doing. I can tell you that most people don't have that as a goal. I can tell you that most people who say that that's their goal, it's not their goal. They've got some other goal they're acting on, and they're papering over by saying, "Oh yes, I want the world to be a better place. Oh yes, I want a world that works for all. Oh yes," and then they create a world that works for all Democrats or all Republicans or all MAGA or all some very small subset of the world. Um, we are not even engaged in conversations that will begin to get us to a world that works for all living beings. Now, as soon as the earth changes that I am predicting, and people like Ilarion and all of the keeper leaders are predicting, when that starts happening, and we realize money doesn't work anymore, and we realize that military power doesn't work anymore, we're going to be looking for something else, and we are going to be looking at the people who have been saying this for 30 or 40 years or so. How do we create a world that works for all? It's like, okay, that's a really good question. Now let's start working on that. And as you are working on that, you will notice that something starts to change inside your heart. First of all, for many of us, we may discover that we actually have a heart. It's not just a blood pump. We'll notice that we feel responsible for more than just ourselves. We feel responsible for um, all the things that are going on. And we stop feeling as though we are helpless to make that change. We'll start noticing that the place that you make the change is right here. And then from here, it goes out into the world. But if we're accepting the um, the less than full connection, um, if we start accepting what Havel calls the consensual lie, then we can't see it. You know, it just becomes more noise that keeps us from seeing our reality. So I am uh, I have to let go of how important this is because I go around like, you gotta see this. And it's like, no, you don't have to see it. And um, when things go south and you go south with them, I'll say, that, what's happening with you right now? That's what I was talking about. You know, um, um, the thing that strikes me is how when I see the examples I gave you of people who are living their lives as though life was their central value. They live very, very simple lives. Um, we don't need all this junk that's going on right now. We don't need 40 brands of toothpaste, you know? Um, we don't need the 41st brand. The reason that we have it is that somebody said, "Oh, wow, I can make $1 billion if I create another brand of toothpaste." And maybe they can. Um, we don't need, there are times in the store I make the wrong turn down the wrong aisle, and I'll go down the cereal aisle. Goodness gracious. How many different ways can you take flour and sugar and put them together? You know, whole lot of sugar. Um, how many do we need more ways to get no nutrition into our bodies? Um, the people who put food on the shelf that has no nutrition in it, when do we hold them responsible for what they're doing? And when do I hold me responsible for buying it in the first place? Um, while I was with them, we didn't buy that stuff. We didn't buy sugary whatever. Angie, are you waving by? She waved by. Okay, I guess you gotta go. Um, um, yeah, yeah, and Esther is saying they put sugar in the food to keep us addicted to their products. And it ain't just sugar, it's a whole lot of chemicals that as soon as you try to get away from those chemicals, you find out exactly how addictive they are. Now, we know that. The problem is we know that and we do it anyway. What is about to happen is we won't be able to do that. And at that point, it's going to be really, really important for us to um, understand what's real and understand what is being asked of us. Back when I lived on that end of 14th Avenue in my last marriage, um, we had this Chinese plum tree in our backyard. And in the summertime, it rained plums. We could not keep up with the plums. The rats were in the backyard eating the plums, and the plums had fermented, and the rats were drunk. They'd just be sitting out in the sunshine, and you walk out in the yard, and and you can kind of kick them with your foot, and they say, "Oh wait, hey, I I can't run right now. I got a buzz." And I would try. I made Chinese plum jam, plain Chinese plum pancake syrup, Chinese plum, anything I could make it at with. I put them in bushel bags, and I tried to give them to the neighbors, and they wouldn't take them because they got their own Chinese plum tree in their backyard. Um, so we can live in an abundant society where we're doing things like that. As soon as we take the profit the money issue out of the equation, we'll see the right thing to do. As long as the money equation is there, it's like, yes, I'm going to push this stuff on you, not because it's good for you, but because it can make money. Speaking of making money, um, what the State Department and Department of Defense, or I should say the Department of War, um, said that so far in what 2 weeks of dropping bombs on Iran, we've spent $2 billion, and they're asking for an additional $200 billion for this war, and and they'll get it because as soon as we say war, the government gets whatever it wants, and at some point in time, that has to stop. Who can make that stop? Well, we know the Republicans can't. We also know the Democrats can't. So who's going to do it? And if you don't do it, and don't do it not because of geopolitical issues, but because why bother spending $200 billion killing a whole bunch of people over there that has no effect on your life? Your life won't get better. The food you buy won't get cheaper. Um, the so we are going to um, have to um, ask the moral questions and ask these as moral questions, not as geopolitical questions, not as left or right questions. That this is how we get to practice our truth. Okay, I am going to stop um, this now. I hope y'all are planning to come to the 4 week series on societal trauma. I'm a little bit um, cautious about doing this. Um, I've steered Commonway away from dealing with people's personal traumas. I don't think that we have the uh, expertise within the organization. I don't want to take my time focusing on one person's issues regarding, their parenting 30 years ago that's having traumatic effects on them now. We together have to rise above that. And Esther just rose above it. And only got a couple more people on the line, so let me go ahead and wrap up now. Um, and say, look forward to you being part of that group and looking forward to addressing these questions at a deeper level. I will talk to all of us at another point in time. Talk to you later. See you and bye.